We want to talk about psychological liberation a little bit. We said it is essential. It's absolutely essential in a verticalist system. What is psychological liberation? And how does one go about getting psychological liberation? Now, this is end of the year. This is the last day of the year. Being the last day of the year, people are looking forward to a new year. But we have to look at that in terms of psychological liberation. And psychological liberation has to unveil the truth about time. When we talk about end of the year, we are talking about time. We are talking about 360 something days that have expired, that have gone by, and we want to start another year. We want to start another 360 something days. That is what we are talking about at the end of the year. Now, in truth, is time linear? We find out that in truth, time is not linear. It is not moving from second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, and so on, until now we have year to year. The truth is that we have two things. We have an evolutionary process and we have a revolutionary process. An evolutionary process is what we as human beings, as bodies of people, as bodies of individuals have gone through. We have evolved from an ape-like creature to the human being that we are, walking on twos instead of on all the fours. That is an evolutionary process. It is a process that has also involved technological development. That initially we had very crude tools, very crude weapons, but now we have reached a stage where we have weapons of mass destruction. We have reached a stage where we have nuclear bombs. We have AK-47 and many other sophisticated machine guns and so on. But we didn't start there. We started at a very crude level where we had weapons made of stone, where we had weapons made from wood, before we discovered gunpowder and then moved on to discover nuclear energy and so on. But that is an evolutionary process, a process that we have gone through to get to a level where each one of us can stand upright and walk on their toes. That's a process of evolution. In the same process technologically that has enabled us to move from crude weapons to where we are now with the weapons of mass destruction. Now, that is at the physical level. When we talk about psychological liberation, we are not talking about physical level. We are talking about something at the mental level. We are talking about something that is, one cannot see the process of development. We are talking about something that requires instant movement. We are talking about we are talking about a revolutionary process. Now, for example, one cannot grow to be kind. That kind of growth is not possible. You don't grow from being unkind to being kind. You cannot grow from being greedy to being generous. There is no growth there. It is a revolutionary process. So when we talk about psychological liberation, we are talking about a revolutionary process. We are talking about one time you are facing the north, then you suddenly face the south. We are talking about one time you are going to the west, then you suddenly start going to the east. That is a revolutionary process. Now, psychological liberation, for example, there is no growth. Unlike what people believe, there's no growth in democracy. Either one is democratic or one is not democratic. Either there is a democratic system or there is no democratic system. All those are aspects of psychological liberation. In other words, when it comes to the psyche, when it comes to the mind, there is no time. In reality, what happens is that the mind exists in a timeless dimension. In a timeless dimension, meaning what? Meaning that everything is arranged in a vertical manner, such that the experiences that one goes through, one is like picking a book. You have arranged a book, a heap of books from down upwards. You pull out which book you want to read. You pull out which experience you want to, what you want to experience. That is what psychological liberation is, that the realization of the timelessness of the mind. The realization that the mind expresses itself through the brain rather than the mind being in the brain or being in the brain. The brain may grow. Scientists say that the brain has become bigger. That may be so, but the mind hasn't grown. The mind remains the mind because it is the structure, the instrument of expression that has changed. The brain may have changed. That's why the brain gets different networks every time one experiences certain things. The brain develops new networks. But that does not mean that the mind has grown. So there are things that are timeless. Freedom is timeless. One cannot grow in freedom. Freedom cannot grow. Now, love cannot grow. That's our timeless things. And that is what psychological liberation is all about. And we are saying that psychological liberation is the education. That is the education that we are talking about. And that education has to be distinguished from schooling. Schooling, as we said, is a process of acquiring new skills. It is a process of growing technologically. It is a process of saying this has not worked. Can we get something that works better? That is what technology is all about. That is what schooling is all about. But education is totally different because education is part of the mind. It is within the mind, and it can only explode on the scene. It can only be inspired. When one is inspired to do something or to achieve something or to create something or to innovate something, that is what education does. And that's why we talk about psychological liberation. Psychological liberation is a point in time, a point in life when one realizes who they are. When one realizes the humanity, the oneness of life, when one realizes that, look here, you don't confuse the body and the person. While the body may be growing, the mind is not growing. While the body may be deformed, the mind is not deformed. And that is what we are talking about. That is what we are saying is education. That is the meaning of an education system. Now, that cannot be confused with schooling. It cannot and it should not be confused with schooling. So when we talk about psychological liberation, we are talking about freeing the mind. Freeing the mind, realizing that the mind is completely limitless, that the mind cannot be limited by anything. The mind is actually the freedom itself, and freedom cannot be limited. So the mind cannot be limited, because freedom and the mind are the same thing. Freedom, the mind, and the light are the same thing. That's why when we talk about someone is enlightened, we are talking about a revolutionary process. How does one get enlightened? One undergoes a revolution. One undergoes tremendous, deep change. Deep transformation. That is what psychological liberation is. And we say that psychological liberation is crucial in the verticalist system, and it is not possible where one is labor is alienated. It is not possible where one has no place to stand. It is not possible where one has no place to call home. Psychological liberation cannot coexist with a labor market. Psychological liberation cannot coexist with a land market. Psychological liberation cannot coexist with a premium on schooling. We have been talking about premium on schooling. What is this premium on schooling? Premium on schooling, we have said it is where people are rewarded not because of their education, not because of what they love doing, but on the basis of their certificates, on the basis of their level of schooling. Let's give an example. That we have two people. One was unable to take a schooling. Therefore, in a setup, is perhaps a watchman. And another person was able to take a schooling, was able to school and go on and on to the highest level. And in a certain setup where this one is a watchman, he is the MD. Is the managing director, or is the chairman, or is the president of that entity. Now, the question is, this one who is a watchman, he is exposed to the elements of nature. He is exposed to hot sun, he is exposed to the rains, he is exposed to wind, he is exposed to cold. That is sufficient punishment if punishment is required for not taking a schooling. The other one, who is protected, who has an elaborate office, who has an elaborate good means of transport, who has a good house, who has a guaranteed ambience so that he can entertain visitors and other people that come to do business with the entity. He is sufficiently rewarded in that status. Therefore, the reward, the two can be partners. While one is doing exactly what they love to do, the one who is being a watchman loves to do that, the reward should be the same, because the punishment and the reward has already taken place by the status. The sharing of the income should be equal. That's what we say. The premium on schooling should not be there. The premium on schooling should be totally removed. That's the meaning of doing away with the premium on schooling. And that is a very important aspect of psychological liberation. Because so long as you are rewarding people, you are paying people according to what the knowledge they have acquired, then you are not developing the world. You are not developing humanity. You are not being human at all. Because people should get their reward depending on their productivity. Get their reward depending on the new thing that they add to the human store, the human stock. That is what is important. And that can only happen in a system that is devoid of slavery, in a system that is devoid of oppression, of exploitation, and corruption. Now, that system is what we call the verticalist system. That system is the system that guarantees the humanity of everybody. You can imagine a system where there is no horizontal expansion. Then there's no reason for people to go to war. There's no reason even for people to quarrel.